Welcome to Sports 101. Yes, that's sports with a dollar sign for the S, because we know here it's all about the money. I'm your host, Will Maldonado, and I'm so excited to be here today to talk about what I know best, sports business. Did you know that sports is a $23 billion industry each year? It's this side of sports that has always fascinated me. The intermingling between athletic performance, contracts, revenue, and expenditures prompted me during childhood to make sure to snag newspapers from my neighbors to read on my way to school. Don't worry, folks of San Jose, I always returned them when I walked home. People just got their news a little late back in the day. So with all that said, let's dive into one of the most interesting topics of the week. Super Bowl Sunday just passed, and by now, we all should have enough time to digest the stunning interception by Patriots cornerback Malcolm Butler to deliver the fourth Lombardi Trophy to New England. It was an absolute stunning play call on Seattle's part. I can't believe they didn't give the ball to beast mode. And a fantastic play by Butler. He broke on that ball so quickly, it was amazing to watch, and I'm sure bettors, gamblers, and fans everywhere lost their mind at that play. While the action on the field was extremely intense, before the game, hundreds of fans were as fired up as Patriots tight end Gronk gets when he's out for a night on the town. That's because many fans found that the tickets they had purchased, even months in advance, were short-sold by ticket brokers. Short selling is a very complex process that I'm going to explain to you now. When you're short selling, ticket brokers are not anticipating the crazy demand for tickets that these kind of Super Bowls are going to bring. So what they're doing is they're speculatively buying the tickets from the NFL in advance. They're saying, hey, we think we can sell this at a higher price than we're going to buy it from you, and so we're going to buy, X amount of tickets at that price. They then turn around and try to upsell and sell it to the regular consumer, the average Joe, you and me, for a lot more than they actually paid for it. What they did not anticipate was that the demand for tickets this week or last week for the Super Bowl was going to be so intense. What ended up happening was that the demand was so intense, the brokers had to cancel a lot of their short sale contracts. This was because they just didn't have the tickets in the inventory available. This happened to people who'd bought tickets months, 2-3 months in advance, and that's ridiculous. Basically, they showed up in Arizona last week without a seat to an event they'd already paid for. Yeah, they still had their money, but then they had to go into the secondary market. And at that point, that's when things got crazy. Tickets last week for the Super Bowl were going for as much as $10,000 a seat. Now, this isn't for sideline access. This isn't for a great view on the 50. This isn't for something that you'd actually want to spend $10,000 for. This was for upper level nosebleed. I can barely see the players' numbers at all. It's utterly ridiculous to think about how much people had to pay on the secondary market last minute. So how do we fix this problem going forward? It's going to be an issue that the NFL is actually going to have to police. They can force ticket brokers not to accept speculative deals for their tickets. The NFL doesn't do any e-ticketing for the Super Bowl. It's all hard copy, old school, traditional ticket measures. So if they're going to do that, it's up to them to make sure that they're not screwing over their own consumers. We don't want to have to buy tickets that we're not going to get. We make plans. The Super Bowl is an event more than just a game. A lot of people go and their team's not even in the actual Super Bowl. But they go for the big parties around the city. They go for the access. They go for the fun. It is absolutely one of the biggest sporting events of the year in America, if not the biggest. I'd sworn for years that it should be a holiday on Monday after the Super Bowl because we're all so pumped up, excited, and many of us are a little bit hungover from one too many drinks the night before. So it's one of those things when you have such a spectacle, when you are putting your integrity on the line, you've got to make sure that you are delivering what you promised to your consumers. If they are still dissatisfying their customers in the next few years, this is going to be a big problem for the NFL. Yeah, it's great that they were able to make so much money from the tickets, but if fans aren't buying them in the future, what's going to happen when Super Bowl 59 is not sold out? That's the situation the NFL can't risk getting into. If you buy a ticket, it's got to be able to be honored. So another interesting thing that I thought came out of the Super Bowl was this statistic that came from or CNN actually. That's 28.4 million Twitter discussions in one day for the Super Bowl. This was a single day event record. There's obviously been bigger, sporting events that have lasted over multiple days that have gotten more Twitter mentions and things like that. But to me, for one single day, to have 28.4 million people discussing sports, that's incredible. And it really shows the impact that social media and sports are having together. I've said it for a long time. Twitter specifically has been so influenced by the sporting realm. That's because teams, journalists, fans, and players have all recognized the power of social media to get news out, to share your brand, and ultimately to really provide a new source of information for the consumer. And we fans gobble it up each and every day. And that's why there were so many Twitter Twitter mentions that day. By far, the most tweeted about moment goes to the interception I spoke of earlier, Malcolm Butler picking off Russell Wilson at the goal line. And that's pretty obvious that was going to be the case. It literally shocked so many of us. So the final stats on that was that the play racked up 395,000 tweets per minute. On a little bit more of the business side, when you looked at the commercial advertisements for the Super Bowl, you got to see the impact of Twitter and social media there as well. That's because 57% of the current ads run during the Super Bowl featured hashtags. So, it'd be something like hashtag tortoise or the hare. I saw that commercial a bunch of times. Who's going to win the big race? And it was one of those situations where the advertisers are really trying to get more bang for their buck. That's because a 30-second spot is currently $4 million for a 30-second commercial during the Super Bowl. Next year, CBS wants to raise the price even higher. They're talking about $5 million for 30 seconds. So when you see those long 1-minute commercials on Super Bowl Sunday, $10 million not to film it, not to do anything like that, just to buy the ad time. And that, my friends, is... Like I said, it's all about the money when you think about sports. It's a big business. We integrate so many different areas of money and finances and businesses into sports. When athletes are considered people who are going to drive your brand's force and name recognition, it happens all the time. I was speaking yesterday with someone who used to work for DirecTV, and he was in their public relations department. And he did a fantastic job there of saying, hey, I worked with a bunch of athletes already to begin with. And we would set up at Super Bowl for media tents and, doing that whole kind of thing. And we'd have our little booth. And what they were doing was just having the athletes come by for signings and things like that for an hour. And that was what they were contracted for. So he reached out to his bosses and said, hey, instead of just a full hour of them signing, give me 20 minutes of that time. And what I'll do is I will bring over the ESPN cameras. Our guys will have the DirecTV swag and hats, and they'll be at our booth in the DirecTV booth. You'll see our little sign there. And we'll do a 20-minute interview with ESPN, with ABC, with NBC, with whoever wants to talk to these guys, because they were some big-name athletes, that they had working with them. And we'll get great exposure. Brands have been doing this for years, capitalizing on the name, capitalizing on the image, and capitalizing on the goodwill that athletes have with the public to make us like them better. I mean, you can't think about brands like Nike, Adidas, without instant names pop into your head. Nike's obviously the most brilliant example when you've got Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, athletes like that who just resonate for years and years and years. And it's this aspect of sports that is so fascinating, that we as consumers are so willing to buy in to all the good things that we feel from the games and the strong feelings we have towards these athletes that make us want to go then buy products from the companies that they are representing. So those were kind of the two things that really stuck out to me about Super Bowl Sunday and things like that. But we also had yesterday, it was National Signing Day in college football. In a little bit here, I'm going to have Elijah Robertson. He's the recruiting coordinator for Whittier College up in Los Angeles. On the program, we're going to discuss National Signing Day. Whittier is not a football playing school, so we won't have too much to say about their commitments, but we will get into National Signing Day, a little bit of the role about the recruiting coordinator and what they do. And most importantly, what we're going to discuss is how bigger schools and bigger conferences, such as the SEC, Pac-12, the Big Five, Big Ten, Atlantic Coast, how those conferences are spending so much more money each year on recruiting. It's absolutely ridiculous, some of the statistics I have that we're going to go over. And it's one of those things that when you think about, you're really going to start to see imbalance in power because of how much money is going into recruiting. If you're outspending guys by as much as they are, well, it's going to make it tough, and teams that have smaller budgets are going to have to get a little bit more resourceful. All right, so with that said, we're going to go to break right now, and we'll be back after this with Elijah Robertson. All right, welcome back. This is Sports 101. Yes, that's sports with a dollar sign because, as we know, sports is all about the money. I'm your host, Will Maldonado. I'm here today on this lovely Thursday afternoon in San Diego, rocking my San Francisco Giants 2010 World Series Championship Buster Posey jersey, letting my fandom be known. And on the phone with me, I have Elijah Robertson, the recruiting coordinator for Whittier College. How you doing today, Elijah?
I'm good. Thank you, Will, for having me on. Just want to say thank you. My name is Elijah Robertson, guys. I am the recruiting coordinator for Whittier College. It is a D3 school, so that entails basically we do not do any athletic scholarships. We just do academic scholarships. We provide a lot of grants that we can give to you to make your transition to high school to college a little easier for yourself.
All right. So, Elijah, obviously you're in the role as a recruiting coordinator. And yesterday was a big day for recruiting coordinators across the country as it was National Letter of Intent Signing Day. This meant that for the first time in this calendar year, second time in the year, the fiscal year, athletes could fax in their letters of intent and officially commit to the school of their choice. And we had some big winners and losers. Obviously, USC had a big signing day. Pretty much all of the recruiting sites have them ranked top 5. Another big one was for UCLA. So the Southern California schools representing it, getting a lot of guys who made commitments to them just yesterday. So let's talk a little bit about signing day and kind of the spectacle that it's become for ESPN. What have you seen, and how do you see it going in the future?
Basically, for me, I've seen since 2006, since they started the whole process of basically giving athletes, the 5-star, the 4-star, and stuff like that, it has blossomed. And ESPN has jumped on for themselves to be able to cash in on that cow because at the end of the day, they're able to bring in money. ESPN now is finally bringing in high school football games such as, games such as Bishop Gorman against Bosco or Modern Day against Bosco. They publicize a lot of the high school games. As you said, with the National Signing Day, it was on all day on ESPNU. They had it for a whole 24 hours. They made sure that, they got that out there for their, younger crowd. And as myself, I was tuned in all day watching, how USC went from with spectacle of being top 10 recruiting class would jump all the way up on Scout.com to number 1. And how UCLA wasn't even supposed to be in the top 15 and ended up jumping all the way up to number 4 on Scout.com. So it was just a lot of fluctuation, and you didn't know what to expect. I don't think a lot of people knew that Imam Marshall Biggie was going to be able to sign with USC. So that just adds in more depth to USC at their defensive back position with Juju and Adoree Smith being back there as well.
Yeah, it was really fascinating. And what it just strikes to me at all times is how much companies such as ESPN, NBC, CBS are looking to add relatively easy to produce content with sports so that they can make money. They know it's a cash cow. They know we're interested. They know we want to turn in. There's such a high demand for live programming that fans can't turn away from, that they're captured by the screen, that networks are willing to go to all kinds of hoops and lengths to jump in order to get that there and provide it for the fans to meet the, to have enough supply to meet the crazy demand. It's hilarious that what's considered riveting television now on ESPNU is I'm going to put 3 hats in front of a high school student and see which one he picks so that he can show where he's going to go for school. And it's led to some fantastic moments in the last couple of years. I remember very specifically Solomon Thomas up in Stanford. He pulled out actually a fern or a tree from underneath to say he was going to fear the tree for the next few years while he was at Stanford, and it was going to be all about the Nerd Nation as he was rocking some glasses. So it's become this kind of like interesting television and show and spectacle that they took from really, it's not that big of a deal what's going on. It happens all the time. But with football, with such a thirst for it from fans of the big conference teams, it's become this huge dynamic thing that people who once maybe would have tuned out to it, they mostly were just focused on the games. I think you're getting more even average fans interested in this kind of thing, and that's amazing to me.
That honestly, just to add on what you're saying, it's amazing. At least for myself, I was literally watching on my computer, and literally I couldn't turn away. I was doing homework at the same time, but still I was just like, man, I can't turn away. Being a fan of the sport of college football, I couldn't turn away. I wanted to see USC what they were going to do. I wanted to see what Nevada was going to do. I also wanted to see what UCLA was going to do. And it's just so riveting to know that, these players can honestly turn around a whole organization. If you look at what Urban Meyer did at Ohio State, him having the #1 recruiting class, and it came into fruition with, their national title. The players starting to develop as they, become more in age, whether that's the sophomore year or junior year, and that recruiting class is being able to show full throttle, as they did in the national title game.
Yeah,
it's
Oh, absolutely. Do you want to go ahead and finish that thought?
It's just basically saying, it's just very riveting just to know that at the end of the day, we just, like you said, 3 hats. It's so can pull people away just to tell you where you're going to school, and people are so in tune with that. And like I said, ESPN cashed in a lot with that because they were the first really to national televise big games, and as well as National Title Day or National Signing Day and stuff like that. Like they're able to cash in with that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. But what's the cost of this long term? And so what I'm talking about here is how much does it cost a school to actually get those recruits? So there was a study done by USA Today, and they took a bunch of data from the last 5 years from public schools, obviously, because they needed to get a Freedom of Information request into them. Private schools are exempt from that, but public schools, as being part of their state system, have to release their financials and their details. And they found out some very, very interesting things, and it really shows you where the balance of power in football is. So, for instance, they found that public schools in the SEC paid an average of $150,000 more per year on recruiting than public schools in other conferences. And so if you wonder why the SEC dominates National Signing Day so often and also is dominating in the top 25 all year long and is the preeminent conference in college football, that's why. They're spending more money than everyone else, and it's quite ridiculous. So you have them at the top of the pack. But then you also have this very interesting thing where the Power Five, so the Pac-12, the Big 12, the Big 10, the ACC, and the SEC are spending an average of $360,000 more than the non-power conferences. So, Elijah, you came from a small school originally at the University of Nevada, Reno. I'm sure you're a big Colin Kaepernick fan. I believe he was there for you while you were an undergrad, right? You guys cannot compete at those levels. So how do you think that money is going to influence college football going forward and really going to separate the haves from the have-nots?
I mean, in all honesty, it was a great point of you adding the money situation. If we go back to Colin was only, given an offer football-wise to Nevada, and I look at the smaller schools having a hard time being able to compete with the bigger schools. But you look at a school such as how Michigan State was the year that they won, the Rose Bowl. They didn't have a big recruitment class where they were in the top 25 or anything like that. The coach was able to get 3-star athletes, 2-star athletes, and a couple of 4 and hone their talent and make them into a team, and not just we're going off of pure talent. We're going to make us, pure as in you believe in our system. We're going to be able to use you as well as we need to. And as well as what you're saying about how does this basically divide situation, between the Power 5 and, the other conferences, it honestly holds, because at the end of the day, you're basically only going to have the power conferences in the national title game or the national championship, whether that's the playoff, for the 4, the 8, teams that is, it's going to push away the small schools, such as Nevada, such as Minnesota, such as a TCU, stuff like that. It's not necessarily going to be, the big conferences that are there. And as we've seen this year with the playoffs, what happened, how TCU basically got, pushed away.
Well, to me, the big thing here is the haves and the rich get richer, while the have-nots don't. So what's going to happen here, you made a great point with Mark D'Antonio over at Michigan State. He's a great coach, fantastic, able to coach up 2-3-star athletes. What's he paid like? He's paid like a great coach. So not only do you have big conferences, such, paying tons more money for recruiting, they're also paying a ton more money for coaches. They just have the budget. And then what happens? They take that, they put a good team on the field, they get into the college football playoff, and they get a financial windfall for their conference. So the conference makes more money, that revenue gets redistributed, and bam. So they spend more money, they make more money, and they keep themselves in the national, spotlight, whereas folks who can't compete on that level in that playing field are pretty much run out of town. And it's going to be very interesting how the NCAA tries to deal with these kind of issues going forward. I think a big scary thing is that vote of autonomy that was given to the Power 5 conferences. We don't exactly know how that's going to play out in the next few years, but I can really see it as the Power 5 are going to play under a completely different set of rules and organization, and that's how they're going to set up. This is a topic definitely for another time that we'll probably have you back on to discuss NCAA autonomy, because it is so interesting how that's going to play out. But I just think it's going to definitely change the whole way of college football and college basketball, those two sports in particular, and how it's done and how we as fans are getting that and who we're rooting for.
Yes, like I said, that is something that I know I'm looking forward to as well, just seeing. And, I can't wait till we, can talk about that topic, because that's going to be a great topic for just debate and to shed light on about what the money situation with the Big 5 conferences are, and, how the other non-conferences are. Basically, they're going in debt with traveling, to the Bahamas and stuff like that, for a bowl game. So, if you look at the, the difference between a big and a small school going to, a bowl game or, traveling to a far destination, they're more in debt for a small school. But for a team like Alabama, that doesn't really mean that they're going to be in debt, because they're able to make a lot of money off of that game.
Absolutely.
With
and
their travel.
Like we say here in sports, it's all about that money, or that oil money.
That oil money.
All right, Elijah, thank you so much for coming on. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you again, Will, for having me.
Absolutely, no problem. Coming up next on Sports 101, we're going to have James Nicholson, insider for LAKings.com, to talk about a big announcement that was made just last week. The AHL coming to California, and specifically sunny San Diego. You're listening to ESPN 1700 and Sports 101. We'll see you soon. All right, welcome back to Sports 101. I'm your host, Will Maldonado, and we're here to talk about the business side of sports, because it's all about the money. I have on the line with me James Nicholson, insider for LAKings.com. James, how you doing today?
I'm fantastic. How are you doing, Will?
Doing great. Great to have you on the line. So we're here to talk a little bit of hockey and southern sunny California, getting some more hockey teams. Talk to us a little bit what was announced last week, James.
Well, the American Hockey League is coming to California. Currently, there are 3 ECHL teams, and those are going to transition into being part of 5 AHL teams in California starting next season. So we're going to have teams in San Jose, Stockton, Bakersfield, Ontario, and in San Diego.
And that is absolutely incredible. San Diego has a very long history of minor league hockey teams playing in this city, and it's one they haven't had for a few years. I believe the last franchise they had in San Diego were called the Gulls, and they folded shop in about 2006. And they played in the ECHL. So the ECHL and AHL, let's talk about the little bit of the difference between those two and where they're at in the structure of minor league hockey.
Well, the ECHL is, to parallel baseball, that would be considered like double A. So you have a lot of guys who are really working hard to get up to that next level. And then with the AHL, that would be more comparable to triple A baseball. So I believe it's something like 88% of all current NHL players have played in the American Hockey League at some point.
So these are your future stalwarts, the guys who are going to be in the league, the guys who you're going to want to see. So getting AHL hockey in California is a big deal. It's mostly been an East Coast, Midwest kind of thing, where that's where all the teams have been concentrated. So having them come out, they're going to form their own division, correct? And so that division's going to be made up of 5 teams, as you said, and they all have major league affiliates. Those are going to be the San Jose Sharks are going to have the team that's in San Jose. The Calgary Flames team will be the team in Stockton. Edmonton's team is going to be in Bakersfield, and we actually already know on that one they're going to keep the Bakersfield Condors name that's already there for the ECHL team. Los Angeles' team is going to be in Ontario. Do we know what team name the Ontario?
They're going to keep the Reign, and actually there is a report out there that they're going to have a Name the Team contest for Bakersfield.
Oh, I love Name the Team contests.
Yeah, and I think the Oilers obviously are very much into the petroleum industry, especially in Edmonton, and Bakersfield being an oil town in California, they might try to go with that theme a little bit, but I do like the Condors name and what they've done there at the ECHL level.
Oh, yeah. Once again, getting back to that oil money. We just had Elijah Robertson on, and he's all about the oil money.
All about the oil money.
So, and then obviously here in San Diego, we've got a lot of interest in the AHL coming because we're going to have the Gulls back, is what I've been hearing. The San Diego Gulls are going to be the AHL affiliate of the Anaheim Ducks.
John Hoven reported on that 2 days ago, that they will be called the Gulls. And John at mayorsmanor.com has been on this from the beginning, and he's done an incredible job covering this. What I've been hearing from my source is that they will actually continue with the name the Admirals as they move from Norfolk, Virginia to San Diego. So I believe the announcement for the name and the jerseys is coming on the 22nd at the Fan Fest, and I think that's just going to add a little bit more drama, a little bit more tension to the announcement.
Oh, absolutely. Admirals really, really works for this town. Obviously, we've got a rich military background and history here, so having a team called the Admirals makes a ton of sense. And so, as you were saying, they're going to have a big event on February 22nd where they'll be announcing the name of the team. That's going to be called Hockey Fest. It's going to be held at the Valley View Casino Center from 12 to 3 p.m. The Valley View Casino Center is actually where they're going to be playing. But in addition to that, we currently are having an ice center constructed in Poway, up here in East County a little bit, and they're going to be practicing at that facility most of the time. It's supposed to be state-of-the-art, and hopefully that'll be done soon, and we'll be able to get our hockey team in there.
Absolutely. That'll be a lot of fun, I think, for the area. I mean, it's going to do a great job of bringing in fans from all around the San Diego County. I mean, right now, the current incarnation of the San Diego Gulls is the Western States Hockey League Junior A team playing up in Escondido at the Iceplex there. And actually, tomorrow night, they're playing the Valencia Flyers, which is the closest WSHL team to me. So maybe I should try to get down to Escondido and do a little bit of reporting and try to get the scoop on that.
Oh, yeah, get some nice minor league hockey action in. It's always fun to watch. I tell people, without a doubt, if you want a fun, entertaining, bang-for-your-buck ticket that you're going to buy to a sporting event, you really can't go wrong with a hockey game. There's just so much action. It's so fast-paced. There's fights if you're into that kind of thing. There's so much to watch in hockey.
Oh, yeah. Any level hockey for the most part, is very entertaining.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, obviously, with the AHL moving to California, there's going to be some challenges, and there's going to be a lot of benefits that happen. So could you talk a little bit about what the challenges and the benefits for these kind of moves are?
Well, the biggest challenge so far has been buying all of the AHL teams. So the Ducks buying the affiliate from Norfolk and owning that team was a process that has taken quite a bit of time. In addition to that, staffing some new teams, shuffling maybe some personnel around between the AHL and ECHL levels, asking staff members to possibly move across the country to remain with the organizations. And then something I've been hearing a little bit about is taxes, the players' taxes on their salaries with the team. It's supposedly for some of these teams and for some of these players going to increase with the move to California.
Absolutely. That's something I actually read just yesterday. The annual AHL or the average AHL annual salary is $88,000 a year. These guys aren't professional, they aren't in the NHL making, $1 million, $500,000 for entry level contract. They're doing okay. You can live off that. But in California, you're going to be tight. You're not going to be able to live the same way you lived in these other places that they were when you're moving from Norfolk over to San Diego. There's going to be a huge cost of increase in living. Yeah. From Worcester to San Jose, that's not as big. The Boston, New England areas is expensive. So it's going to be one of those things where these players find themselves in a new tax bracket. And the figure I read was some of them will be paying an extra $1,000 a year in taxes just to play the same game on a different side of the country.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, I don't have the tax codes in front of me here, so I'm not an expert by any means.
Well, darn you, James! Aspect. Why aren't you a tax expert?
I thought that was your expertise there.
Oh yeah, I have done a tax show once, but I was the dunderhead who didn't know anything and asked a bunch of questions on that show. We might have to get Jeff Kahn on our program to speak to this.
Well, I mean, with the AHL coming to California, the benefits for these teams definitely are the amount of travel done by the players when they're called up or sent back down. Hockey operations staffs aren't going to have to fly internationally or across the country as much anymore. Actually, the two teams, the NHL teams in Canada, will still have to fly internationally, but it's still considerably less travel for them. Plus, I mean, it's just going to be, I think, a logical way to save some money in the long term.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's one of the things I definitely saw being from the Bay Area as a San Jose Sharks fan growing up, when they're recalling guys from Worcester with this whole two-way contract thing and how that's set up, and we'll talk about that in a minute. It was difficult because, if they needed a guy that night, because they had an injury in the morning that they found out, there was no way they were going to get a player packed up over to them that night. They were going to have to play short staff that day. It happened a couple times in goalie situations where they just didn't have anyone available, so they had to put a coach on the bench who, or a guy from a local roller hockey league who hadn't played ice hockey in a while. With this ability to, have their guys right there, it's going to totally help these franchises out. And it really comes back to that two-way contract thing I was talking about before. This point got brought up, and my goal in this program here is to really help people understand the business side and the way contracts and things like that work in sports. And so a question got posed to me over the NHL All-Star break, and I think you'll be great to speak on this. It was my friend, and she texted me. She's a casual hockey fan, lives in San Jose, knows I know a lot about sports, and so she goes, "Hey, I have a question." And I say, "What's going on?" And she says, "The Sharks recalled Hurdle from some team in Massachusetts." And she goes, "What does that mean?" And so I broke it down to her, and I explained that in the NHL, the younger players have what's called a two-way contract. That's what you first sign when you sign your original contract. So explain what a two-way contract does, how teams move from their minor league team and to their NHL franchise, and how that gets sent back, and what the difference is between a two-way contract and a one-way contract.
Well, a two-way contract means you're paid according to the scale of the league you're in currently. So if you're on a two-way contract and you're at the American Hockey League level, you're getting paid, that amount. We'll say it's around $88,000 annually. Then when you get called up to the NHL, for the amount of games you're up there, you're making an NHL level salary. So your pay your pay rate goes from $88,000 annually to a prorated, maybe $800,000 contract.
Big bump.
Oh yeah. So with the two-way deal, also, if it's on an entry-level contract, so players between 18 and 25 who have played a certain number of games under the limit, you can go between the leagues as many times as you want without having to clear waivers.
Clearing waivers, that was really the point I tried to hammer home with her, is that older players are susceptible. If you want to move them to the minors, say a guy's struggling and he's taking up a big portion of your cap space. He's, taking up $5 million. If he had started the year in the minors, he wouldn't be taking that up on your salary cap. But you're in this situation where he's struggling and he's kind of become a sunk cost for your team. He's not really doing you anything, and you want to clear the roster space and get a younger player up. But you don't want to necessarily lose him entirely. So to send him to the minors, you have to put him on waivers, correct?
Correct. And that actually just happened with the Kings with Mike Richards. He had to clear waivers to go from the Los Angeles Kings to their current AHL affiliate, the Manchester Monarchs in New Hampshire. So, he's on a one-way contract. And a one-way contract means you're going to be paid that amount of money for the entire time you have that contract. So, like Mike Richards, I believe this year was being paid over $5 million.
Check, please.
So while he's at the American Hockey League level, he's still being paid that $5 million. There's no difference in his amount of pay.
So he gets to roll in the Bucks and go down to the minors, although, let's be fair, he's not in conditions he's used to down there, I'm sure. He's not getting chartered jets to have a game.
He had 2 goals, including a shorthanded goal, but I think if it was up to him, he would definitely want to be back at the NHL level.
Well, obviously, he's got a sense of pride, and he's was a very good, productive player for the Kings for a long time. So it is a bit of a bummer to see him down there. I have heard speculation, obviously you can't say too much about this, that Toronto's GM has been seen at Manchester Monarchs games, but they assured the media that, of course, they were just doing their due diligence on all players, not so much on that guy.
Yeah, seeing as I'm in California and not currently in New Hampshire, I can't attest to whether or not he was there.
Well, darn you, James. Why can't you be in 2 places at once?
I'll get on that. I'll get on the transporter immediately.
All right, James. Thank you so much for coming on. It was a great discussion. We're really excited to have the Gulls or the Admirals or whatever they are here in San Diego. I think it's going to provide a lot of great opportunities for the area. Get some really good hockey that the area is not accustomed to. Like we said, the AHL is more like a AAA team versus a AA team. So it's just a little bit higher standard of play that you're going to be seeing in San Diego hockey. And hopefully this experiment will be a success. I know they're talking about a lot of different things that they might want to do. Might have a difference in the schedule, might have, a way of playing mostly just the Pacific Division teams, playoffs, all that kind of stuff. It's going to be interesting to see how it all works out. And it's going to be a great experiment here for hockey in California.
It really is. And they wouldn't be doing this if they hadn't seen success already at the ECHL level. So hopefully that success continues.
All right. I'm always about getting good hockey. Thank you so much, James, for joining us. We'll have you on again soon whenever we need to talk a little puck.
Thank you very much, Will. Loving the show, and wish you continued success with it.
Thank you very much. Have a great day. All right, folks. So that was James Nicholson, LAKings.com insider, talking a little bit AHL and NHL hockey. Coming up, we're going to talk about the NFL and the LA Stadium situation. Who's going to be the team that's there? What are they going to do? How's this all going to go down? Stay tuned. We've got more coming up next. Welcome back. We're rolling along here on Sports 101. That's sports with a $sign for the S, because we know that sports are all about the money.
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Yep, the truth. That's what we're here to deliver, to talk about the truth behind the business side of sports. So, I have an interesting kind of thing that I've been thinking about the last month or two, and that's the NFL coming to Los Angeles. It was announced at the beginning of January that Rams owner Stan Kroenke had struck a deal with Stockbridge Capital to build a new NFL stadium here in Inglewood, California. The Rams owner owns 60 acres of land right there, while Stockbridge Capital owns the adjacent 238-acre Hollywood Park. Now, the key to this is that they're going to build the stadium at absolutely no cost to taxpayers. It's going to be privately financed, completely done by Kroenke and the Stockbridge Capital Group. So what does this mean for football in Los Angeles? Well, the first thing that strikes me is that this might be a death sentence to football in St. Louis as we know it. The Rams are able to opt out of their stadium deal each year. They have an opt-out clause, so they could move as soon as next year, the 2016 season, so not 2015. They should still be in St. Louis when we kick off the football games. But for 2016, they will be able to leave if they've got a plan in place. The NFL is big on making sure that teams bargain in good faith with the community that they are currently in. They can't just relocate without having tried to stay in the area that they're in. But the way the deal is structured with the Rams and the city of St. Louis and the renovations that would be needed on the Edward James Dome where the Rams are currently playing, it looks like the Rams have made that commitment and aren't getting enough support from St. Louis to keep the team there. Here's the interesting thing. Kroenke's willing to build the land at no taxpayer cost in Los Angeles. He's not willing to do the same thing in St. Louis. He wants some public financing for the stadium, and he would kick in, the remainder. So that really tells me they're not necessarily bargaining in good faith, but it's also, you got to remember, real estate's much more expensive here in California, and you can also do a lot more with it here in California. And so if they build a development next to the stadium, with shops and all that kind of stuff, there's a good chance it'll be more successful. Now, the key here is the size of the land. Having 238 acres at Hollywood Park and 60 acres that Kroenke owns is well more than enough to support a stadium and a bunch of business developments surrounding that. For reference, the current biggest stadium in terms of acreage is in Dallas, Jerry World, which has 148 acres, and the stadium's only built on 73. So you've got plenty of land there to do this. You can build parking structures, you can build restaurants, apartment, condo rises in the area. It'll work, and it's near enough to LAX. It's a very ideal location, and it is the most concrete plan, it seems like, that they've come for building a stadium in Los Angeles in some time. But here's a key thing we must remember. The NFL prefers to have two teams in Los Angeles. That's because when they build stadiums, and this is something I know from up in the Bay Area because there was a lot of talks when it was talked about a lot when the Niners were building Levi Stadium. The NFL is willing to kick in a financing loan of $200 million to help you build your stadium. That's what they did for the Niners. It was a record at the time. But in LA, they'd probably be willing to do that as well. The thing is, they only want to kick in that payment, or they really want to kick in that payment for one stadium in the city. So if you're going to have two teams trying to build stadiums in Los Angeles, it doesn't make fiscal sense for the NFL to say, here's $2 million for one stadium in Inglewood, here's $200 million for another stadium in the City of Industry. They'd rather give the $200 million and have two tenants in the same stadium at the one time, kind of doing the same model they have in New York, New Jersey with the Giants and the Jets. So remember, stadiums are expensive. It cost the Niners $1 billion, a little bit over. I think it was actually 1.1 was the final price tag to build Levi Stadium. It's expensive. You got to get a lot of financing. Having the land is a big part of it, so that that's already cleared and good. But there's just a lot of things that come up when you're building the stadium. Jerry World, I believe, was another $1.3 billion. So it's one of those things that building a stadium costs money and capital. And if you can get $200 million chipped in by the league, you're going to want to do it. And if the stipulation from the league is, you're going to have to have a second tenant so that we have two teams in LA, which we know can be successful. We know LA is a big market. We've seen it work in basketball. We know that LA can support that because, to be honest, LA could. Traffic will be a problem no matter what. That's not going to change just because you have a football stadium there on Sundays. It's going to be a mess on all those freeways and all that interweb. So what it comes down to is what's best for the league. Which teams are going to end up in Los Angeles? And if you look at the tea leaves and you look at what I'm seeing, I think it's pretty clear. And here in San Diego, we worry about it a lot. We worry about the Chargers wanting to move up to Los Angeles and breaking the hearts of all of their 3 million fans here in the city. You know, it would be pretty devastating to lose our Chargers to the city of Los Angeles. I don't see it going that way, however. I think we don't have to worry so much. And that's because we've really started to see from Chargers ownership and the sons of the Spanos family really starting to take pride in being a part of the San Diego culture. So the fact that they grew up here and went to schools here in San Diego, they want to keep that legacy and keep their team with them because it's what they grew up with. And they have a sense of pride of where they've come from. And if you really look at the team that makes the most sense, that could potentially move with the Rams, it's up in my hometown, the Bay Area, and it's in Oakland. The Raiders stadium situation is a mess. Oakland is in a wreck financially. They're not in the best place. And if you look at the reportings, a lot of the great crack columnists up there, such as Tim Kawakami, Mark Purdy, all those folks, there's this real internal battle and struggle with Oakland. And it's kind of coming down to, do we keep the A's or do we keep the Raiders? And that's going to be tough. That's going to be a tough decision. Baseball stadiums are a little bit cheaper, easier to build. Football stadiums are expensive and come with a lot of delays and things like that. And you also have to remember the history of Oakland and what they had to do to bring the Raiders back the first time from Los Angeles. They basically sold themselves to Al Davis back in the 90s. And they hitched their wagon to that train and were glad to bring the Raiders back. And they ruined what at the time had been a very beautiful baseball stadium. And they turned it into, this big, gigantic coliseum with Mount Davis blocking the beautiful views you had before. And it really became a situation where the stadium's out of date. I've been there before. It's not enjoyable. It's not an enjoyable fan experience in comparison to these other amazing stadiums that are out there. It's very similar to what we've got here in Qualcomm Park. It's just not as solid of a stadium, and it's not as enjoyable of an experience. It's a lot of concrete, it was definitely that kind of architecture. It's older. That's what it is. It's not what you want. You want something new and shiny, and you want your toy. So it's gonna be something that has to change soon for one of those teams. The A's have been trying to move to San Jose for a couple of years, and they've been blocked steadfastly by the MLB and the San Francisco Giants because of territorial rights. Lawsuits to try and get the A's to be able to move to San Jose are getting thrown out by judges, and it's really not looking like they're going to leave Oakland. So does Oakland say, okay, we've got the A's and we can build them a stadium and we can work with them and try and rebuild that relationship because they seem more tenable? Or do they say, no, the A's have not been trying to stay with us, we're going to hitch our wagon to the Raiders? I think the key thing, and what we'll have to watch out here in the future, is Raiders ownership. I'm not so sure that the NFL wants Mark Davis owning a franchise in Los Angeles. They might want someone who's a little bit better, a little more savvy, a little bit more business-oriented, and can bring in the revenue and truly maximize the Los Angeles market. So if we start to see rumblings, if we start to hear that the Raiders might be up for sale, if we start to hear that buyers are, looking at bringing the Raiders down to Los Angeles, that's when I think we'll have the for sure sign that it'll be the Raiders and the Rams in LA. And I think it's coming. I think by 2018, we may see a stadium built. We may see at the very least the Rams. I'm not so far as to guarantee because I never like to assume and jump the gun, but I have a very strong suspicion that it'll be the Rams in Los Angeles by 2018, and I think the Raiders are going to join them. And I think Southern California will have 3 teams, and the Niners will be left to rule Northern California. All right, well, it's been a fantastic show today. I've had a lot of fun. It's a beautiful, sunny San Diego Thursday afternoon. Special thanks to Elijah Robertson of Whittier College, the recruiting coordinator there at Whittier, for coming on, as well as James Nicholson, LAKings.com insider, for coming on. We'll be back next Thursday from 2 to 3 p.m., same time, to discuss more of the business of sports. Because remember, it's all about the money.
Check, please.